Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Hello and good morning, everybody. My name is Thuwayba Barwani. I'm the director of the Center for Excellence in Teaching and Learning, and I'm also a professor of curriculum and instruction at the College of Education, Sultan Qaboos University. It is my great pleasure to be here with you today to share some of the findings of a big research project that we conducted between 2010 and 2014. So the outline of my presentation is going to be, first I will address the purpose of our research, and I'll talk broadly about the project first, and then I'll focus on what we're going to present today. And then we have some underlying issues that I want to address with you. And then I'll tell you about the research design, which will encompass the sample, the population and the sample, the tools that we have used, and so on. And then I'll look at the selected findings. Here I will only focus on the findings that are of concern to us today, and that is critical thinking performance of our students, and then the implications both for policy and further research. Let me first tell you why we decided to embark on this research. Over the years, we noticed that our students had certain characteristics in their academic work, certain things that distinguished them. And these are from their performance. High dropout rates were significant, high probation rates, and poor foundation test scores. Now, a combination of these things troubled us, and we needed to find out why. So we asked the question, how prepared are our students really for higher education? And this was the focus of the big project that we embarked on between 2010 and 2014. However, today's presentation is going to focus only on one element that is of concern for this course, and that is critical thinking. So the research questions that we had were, what are the critical thinking skill capabilities of our students who enter SQU? What are the differences in the critical thinking skills of students entering SQU in 2010 and when they are tested again in 2013 after 3 years of study at the university? What are the differences in critical thinking skill attainment across the 9 colleges? And how does critical thinking attainment correlate with academic measure, program enrollment, and student cumulative GPA? So the methodology that we have used for this study is a descriptive and correlational analysis of data from the California Critical Thinking Skills Test by individuals, by college, and by program within the colleges. That way we were able to correlate different variables. The sample included all incoming students between 2010 and 2013. So 1,725 students in cohort 2010, 2,903 students in cohort 2011, and 3,036 students in cohort 2012, and 2,896 in cohort 2013. The CCST was administered to all students present at the orientation program. In 2013, a convenience sample of 693 was selected from cohorts 2010 and 2012, and those were retested in 2013. So let me share the findings of our research. First of all, I want to show you the interpretation of the findings. Before you see the results, I want you to see the interpretation of these results. There is the overall score, which according to Insight, if a student gets between 0 and 7, it means critical thinking is not manifested. And if they get between 24 and above, then it's superior. And the bottom part of the table shows the subscales of the critical thinking. So when you break it down into the subscales, you find that they differ. Like analysis, if a student gets between 0 and 2, it's not manifested. Now I want you to remember this. So here are our results. You can see on the second line the CCST total score of our students. The CCST total scores. So if you look under 2010, you'll find that our students got an average of 11.34. And in 2013, they got an average of 11.43. Now, if you recall, 11 falls within the weak range. Now, if you look at the specific skills like analysis, inference, evaluation, induction, and deduction, you find that our students also do poorly in the breakdown of these skills. On the slide, you can see how the United States assessment in 2010, how their students performed. As you can see, the two-year college students in the United States performed 14.7, an average of 14.7, and the four-year college students performed at 16.8. Now, if you look at the same years and how our students have performed, you'll find that ours are way inferior. So as I said earlier, in 2013, we selected 693, a convenience sample of 693 students, and we retested them to see the extent to which we at the university have been able to develop a critical thinking skill. So in front of you are the retest data. You can see we have analyzed this data according to college. So you can see in the analysis of these results that are in front of us that the College of Medicine stands out. In the pretest, it got 13.04 as an average, and in the post-test, their score improved by 2.22, and it reached 15.26. The average scores or means actually hide some significant truths about our students' performance. So the following graphs that are in front of us shows us individual performance of our students. So you can see that in the first one, in the pretest, our students reached actually 18 to 20 to 22 and above 22, maybe 23. And when you look at the post-test, you find that the students have shifted quite a bit from, as you can see, the red one shows weak, and so if you look at the second graph, the weak has been reduced. And when you look at the orange one, which was bigger in the pretest, it has been reduced. And when you look at the yellow, which is moderate, you find that the moderate has increased in the post-test, and also the amount of, or the number of students who have reached green, which is strong, has increased in the post-test, and we even have blue, which was not there in the pretest. So that, when you look at individual, it gives a different picture, a more promising picture, that we were able to actually get some students to the level that is expected. In this slide, it shows you the difference between the pretest and the post-test on individual students' performance. And so you can see that there, as I said earlier, there are some students who have actually grown by 4 points, some by 8, some by 12, some even reached above 16 points of growth between the pretest and the post-test. This seems to indicate, and you can also see that we still have some bread, negative score. And according to Insight's interpretation, this is not realistic. It doesn't work this way in critical thinking testing. So the interpretation that we have is that perhaps these students who regressed in the post-test may have not taken this test seriously. Okay, so we did further analysis of our data, and we wanted to see the extent to which there is a correlation between subject areas and the overall CCTST score. And we found that physics, biology, chemistry, pure math students, when they enter the university, they perform significantly higher in critical thinking skills test. When we looked at the students' GPA after the post-test, we found that the cumulative GPA had shown some positive correlations, small but positive correlations with the CCTST scores. What this data seems to indicate is that while many students are making progress, in critical thinking, perhaps critical thinking is not a major criteria for grading or for GPA improvement at SQU, which means that we are either not focusing on critical thinking, or we are not assessing critical thinking, or we are not rewarding critical thinking. So what should we do here at SQU to promote critical thinking amongst our students? And here are some of the suggestions that we have. The first one is to include higher order thinking skills in the graduate attributes. And we think that this is important because if it's part of the attributes, then we will be monitoring it, we'll be assessing it, and we'll be making sure that it is happening, both in the way we teach our students and the way our students are learning. So this is important at a policy level. Another one is to include higher order thinking skills in course design. Once we have higher order thinking skills as part of the attributes, then it is of necessity that it appears within our course design. Also, use teaching methodologies, because it's not enough to have it as a graduate attribute and as a course design, but if you don't actually implement it in the classroom in their teaching methodologies, then you cannot enhance thinking skills. And we need to use problem solving, critical reflection, analysis, and so on in our teaching. Ensure that our students are learning these skills and perfecting them. And I think of importance here also is that we train our faculty on how to develop critical thinking skills amongst our students. We know that while we think we are probably doing it, and maybe implicitly actually doing it, but we want it to be explicit. Faculty have to know the process. If you want to inculcate critical thinking amongst your students, this is what you need to do. So there are specific things that they need to do in the class to ensure that it is happening. Also explicitly train students as well on critical thinking skills development. So we need to have courses for faculty to develop their skills on how to teach it. And we also need to have courses for students so that they will know how they can develop their own critical thinking skills. Critical thinking also should be assessed and rewarded. This is what SQU should do. So with regards to the policy implications, we have a number of points that we want to raise. The first one is this research. It is of necessity that this research is replicated. As you are aware, the final year of this research was 2014. And so from 2014 to the present, which is 2018, we're talking about 4 years, 5 years actually, because we finished collecting the last set of data in 2013 and not 14. And so we have like 5 years. We don't know where our students are right now. So somebody needs to replicate this research so we know where our students are. The second thing that we want to raise is the lack of significant correlations between diploma scores and foundation scores, and between CCST and diploma scores indicates that we have to explore other ways of assessing our students. We know that the secondary certificate, the diploma scores that we get are not indicative of how our students are going to perform at the university. With regards to the Ministry of Education, we're suggesting that the school curriculum should prepare students for the requirements of higher education, which means they need to give them the skills that are needed at the universities, both the study skills, the right attitudes for the university, as well as a big dose of critical thinking, high order thinking skills, problem solving, and so on. They need to do a lot of that at school. Critical thinking should also be taught, assessed, and rewarded at all levels of schooling. So our suggestions for future research. Number one is to examine critical thinking in the school curriculum. How much of critical thinking is really being taught in school? What part of the curriculum focuses on critical thinking? And then we need to examine the relationship between foundation scores and CCTST scores, which we didn't do. We also need to examine classroom practice focused on higher order thinking skills. We need to see what other higher order thinking skills are being promoted in the classroom. We need to examine schools that identified high as well as low critical thinking scores so that we can see which schools are actually focusing on critical thinking and which schools are not, so that if there's any intervention, we know how to focus on which schools to make the necessary interventions. Also, we need to examine schools that are identified with high and low foundation test scores. There are some schools which perform extremely well and their students had very few hours, extra hours that they needed, or they challenged out of the foundation school program. So what signifies these schools and what can we learn from them? So here is our research team. And with that, I want to thank you for following up on this course. And the research team is really looking forward to discussing whatever issues you may find with regards to our findings on critical thinking. And you can use the discussion board to post whatever questions and comments that you may have. Thank you.